The sun was only beginning to rise over Yumadim village, and the air was filled with the soft crowing of roosters. The huts with thatched roofs glowed golden in the first light of dawn, and women could already be heard pounding yam and mortars, preparing breakfast for their families. But in the small compound at the far end of the village, a young girl named Amara was already bent over the well, pulling up buckets of water one after another. Her back ached. Her palms were raw. Yet she worked silently, because she knew if she slowed down, the sharp voice of her stepmother, Ngozi, would cut through the air like a whip. Inside the house, Ngozi sat on a wooden stool, combing her elder daughter Dee's long hair. Adiz was dressed in a bright wrapper, humming a song lazily. Her younger sister Onika sat nearby, yawning and sipping warm pap from a calabash bowl. Both sisters had smooth hands and polished skin, untouched by hardship. All the difficult chores of the house fell on Amara alone. Ngozi's eyes narrowed as she caught sight of Amara entering with a heavy pot of water balanced carefully on her head. "Foolish girl," Ngozi snapped. "Why are you moving like a snail? Do you want us to die of thirst before you bring water?" Amara bit her lip, lowered the pot gently to the ground, and whispered, "I am sorry, Mama Ngozi. The rope at the well was stiff. It took me time." Adiz sneered. "Excuses again. You're always too slow. Look at your hands, rough like a farmer's. Who will ever marry such a girl?" Onika giggled and added, "Maybe a blind man." The three of them burst into cruel laughter. Amara stood quietly, her eyes lowered. Tears threatened to rise, but she swallowed them back. Crying never softened Ngozi's heart. That morning, Amara tried to slip away to meet Mama Ifioma, an old woman in the village who often gave her comfort. But before she could leave, Ngozi's sharp voice echoed again. "Amara, go to the farm and weed the cassava plot. And don't return until every corner is clean. If you dare come back with dirt under your nails, you will sleep outside tonight." "Yes, Mama Ngozi," Amara murmured. She lifted a hoe and began walking, her bare feet dusty, her body weary. On the way to the farm, she met Pastor Emmanuel, the gentle-hearted village pastor who had known her father before he died. He looked at her with concern. "My child," he said softly, "you look tired. Has Ngozi been giving you too much work again?" Amara lowered her head. "I am fine, Pastor. Work makes me strong." The pastor sighed. "Amara, I know you suffer, but remember, God sees everything. Do not let bitterness enter your heart." His words gave Amara a little comfort. She smiled faintly, then continued her way. Meanwhile, inside the house, Ngozi was whispering to her daughters. Her eyes were filled with envy and malice. "Look at that girl," she said, pointing toward the direction Amara had gone. "She is more beautiful than both of you together. If we are not careful, the young men of this village will look at her and forget you. I cannot allow her to shine while my own daughters fade into shadows." Adiz tossed her head proudly. "But, Mama, no man of worth will want her. She wears rags. She smells of farm sweat. We are the ones who deserve suitors with wealth." Ngozi's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Yes, and to make sure she never rises, I will find a way to crush her future. She will marry the lowest man possible. A man with no wealth, no strength, no hope. Then she will never raise her head again." Onika clapped her hands in excitement. "That will be perfect. Let her suffer forever." The three of them laughed again, their voices hard as stones. By midday, Amara had worked under the burning sun until her skin glistened with sweat. Her hands were blistered from the hoe. She sat briefly under a tree, wiping her forehead. It was then that Mama Ifioma came walking along the narrow path, leaning on her staff. "Child," Mama Ifioma said kindly, "your eyes are heavy with pain. Do not let their cruelty destroy your spirit. Remember what your late father always said. Goodness may be buried under dust, but one day it will shine like the sun." Amara's throat tightened. "Mama Ifioma, sometimes I wonder if God has forgotten me." The old woman shook her head firmly. "No, child, he never forgets. Life may test you, but those with pure hearts always find light in the end." Her words wrapped around Amara like a soft cloth. For the first time that day, Amara smiled. She picked up her hoe again, stronger in spirit. That evening, when Amara returned home, she found Ngozi waiting with a twisted smile. Tomorrow, Ngozi announced, "A visitor is coming. A man. I have chosen him for you. Amara." Amara froze, fear creeping into her chest. "A man, Mama?" "Yes. Do not question me. You are of age, and I will not waste my food feeding you anymore. Tomorrow, you will meet your future husband." Adiz and Onika exchanged sly glances, their mouths curving with wicked amusement. Amara's heart pounded. She had dreamed of marrying a man who would love her, who would see her as more than a servant. But with Ngozi in control, she feared what kind of fate awaited her. That night, as she lay on her mat, staring at the cracked ceiling, she whispered a prayer. "Lord, I have nothing but you. Protect me from evil. Give me strength for whatever tomorrow brings." And though her eyes were heavy with tears, somewhere deep in her heart, a small flame of hope continued to burn. The next morning, the compound in Ngozi's household buzzed with unusual tension. Chickens scratched in the dust, goats bleated lazily, and neighbors passed by, curious at the sight of new mats being spread on the ground and a small pot of palm wine being placed on the table. Word traveled fast in Unimaginable village, and before long, whispers carried across the air. Ngozi is marrying off Amara today." "To who?" "Some man from another town. They say he cannot even walk. He comes in a wheelchair." "A wheelchair? Chai, poor Amara. That stepmother of hers has no mercy." By midday, the news had reached every corner of the village. Many women shook their heads in pity, but none dared confront Ngozi. They all knew how sharp her tongue was, how dangerous her pride could be. Inside the house, Amara sat quietly on a low stool. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wore an old wrapper, freshly washed but faded from years of use. Her hair was tied simply. She wished her late father could walk to the door and rescue her, but she knew such dreams were useless. Ngozi entered with Adiz and Onika at her sides. She looked Amara up and down, then clicked her tongue in disgust. "Is this how you sit like a sack of yam? Straighten your back. Even if you are going to a useless man, at least look decent." Adiz smirked. "Mama, why waste your words? Nobody of value will notice her." Onika added with a laugh, except maybe her crippled husband. The words cut through Amara's heart, but she kept her eyes down. Fighting back would only bring harsher punishment. Soon, the sound of wheels crunching over the dusty path reached the compound. Everyone turned their heads. A tall, strong young man named Chief Okoro appeared first, pushing a sleek wheelchair. And in that chair sat the man who was to become Amara's husband, Chaik Obi. He was dressed in a clean white kaftan with blue embroidery, his frame straight and dignified despite the chair. His face carried quiet strength. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, yet strangely gentle. The villagers whispered loudly as he entered. So it is true. That poor girl. A man who cannot walk? What kind of life is that? But look at his clothes. He doesn't look poor. Don't be fooled. Good clothes mean nothing. Ngozi hurried forward, plastering a false smile on her face. "Welcome, my in-law." "Welcome, Chief Okoro. And you too, Chaik. Today, my daughter Amara becomes your wife. She will serve you well." Chaik's gaze moved slowly from Ngozi to Amara. Their eyes met for the first time. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She expected to see pity or weakness in his expression, but instead, she saw something else, something she could not name. Chaik spoke in a calm, deep voice. "Good afternoon. Are you Amara?" Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." His eyes lingered on her a moment longer before he looked away. The marriage was carried out quickly, without ceremony. Pastor Emmanuel was called to bless the union, though his face was clouded with worry. He pulled Amara aside briefly before the vows. "My child," he whispered, "I know you did not choose this. But remember, marriage is not just about the body, it is about the heart. If this man has even a little kindness, treat him with respect. God may surprise you." Tears burned in Amara's eyes as she nodded. When the vows were spoken, Ngozi clapped her hands in satisfaction. Adiz and Onika exchanged mocking looks, covering their laughter behind their palms. To them, This was victory. Amara was no longer a threat. She was tied forever to a man in a wheelchair. After the small ceremony, Chaik turned to Amara. "Are you ready to come with me?" Her heart squeezed with fear. Leaving the only home she had known, even if it was filled with cruelty, was terrifying. But she bowed her head. Yes. Chief Okoro wheeled Chaik forward, and Amara followed silently. Ngozi called after them with fake sweetness. "Serve your husband well. Amara, do not return here crying." Adiz and Onika burst into laughter once more. Amara clenched her fists at her sides but said nothing. The road away from the village was quiet. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and red. Amara walked beside the chair, her steps heavy. Finally, Chaik spoke. "You do not smile. Do you hate this marriage?" Amara glanced at him, startled by his directness. She lowered her gaze again. "It was not my choice, sir, but I will serve you faithfully." Chaik studied her face. "Even though you believe I am weak?" Her brow furrowed. "I do not judge you for chair. A man is not measured by his legs, but by his heart." For the first time, the corner of Chaik's lips lifted in the smallest hint of a smile. They arrived at a small compound at the edge of town. It was neat, though simple. Nothing like the poverty Amara expected, but also not the wealth of a great man. Servants came quietly, bowing to Chaik, but he waved them away, insisting on privacy. That night, Amara lay on a new mat, her mind restless. She thought of Mama Ifeoma's words. Goodness may be buried under dust, but one day it will shine. She whispered a prayer for strength. In the other room, Chaik sat quietly by a window, looking at the stars. Chief Okoro entered. "Sir, are you satisfied with your bride?" he asked. Chaik's eyes softened. "She has pain in her soul, but she has a heart unlike any I have seen. Let us wait. Time will reveal everything." And with that, the house fell silent. Amara in fear of the future, Chaik in secret knowledge of his hidden life, and the village buzzing with gossip of the cruel marriage that had just taken place. The first days of Amara's marriage passed in silence. The small compound where Chaik lived was far quieter than Ngozi's noisy home. The servants who worked there treated Chaik with deep respect, but they also watched Amara with curiosity. None of them knew what kind of wife she would become. On the very first morning, before the cock crowed, Amara was already awake. She swept the compound with a broom made of palm fronds, gathered water from the well, and lit the cooking fire. She pounded yam with strong arms, even though her palms were sore from the hoeing of the previous day. By the time Chaik wheeled himself out into the courtyard, breakfast was already steaming in a clay pot. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You rise early." Amara bowed her head. "It is my duty, sir. A wife should make the home ready before her husband wakes." Chaik studied her quietly. In his life, he had seen many women who chased wealth, women who spent their mornings painting their faces and gossiping, not lifting a finger. But here was this girl, forced into marriage, yet serving without complaint. Something about her stirred his curiosity. Later that day, Chaik tested her again. As she carried a heavy pot of water, he asked, "Do you not resent this? Serving a man who cannot even walk?" Amara froze, the pot heavy in her hands. Slowly, she shook her head. "I resent only the cruelty that brought me here, but not you. You are my husband now. Whether you walk or not, you are still a man deserving of respect." Chaik's lips curved into a faint smile, though he quickly hid it. Days turned into weeks. Amara's gentle spirit became the heart of the household. She cooked, cleaned, and even sang softly while she worked, her voice carrying like a sweet bird to the compound. The servants began to whisper among themselves, "This new wife, she is not like the others. She treats the master with care, even though she believes him poor. Her heart is pure. Perhaps she is the one the master has been waiting for." Chaik overheard some of these whispers, but he said nothing. Instead, he watched her closely. Each time Amara placed food before him, she bowed slightly. Each time he needed help reaching for something, she came without hesitation. She never once looked at him with disgust or pity, only with quiet respect. One evening, as the sky turned purple with dusk, Chaik called her to sit beside him. "Amara, tell me, What do you dream of?" She hesitated. Nobody had ever asked her that before. "I dream," she whispered, "of peace, of a home where I am not treated like dirt, of children who will not grow up in fear." Chaik's gaze softened. "And if such a dream could come true, would you believe it?" She smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Dreams are for those with freedom. My life is already decided." But in his heart, Chaik thought, "No, your life is only beginning." While Amara grew in kindness, far away in the village, Ngozi's tongue never rested. She sat in the market square, gossiping loudly with other women. "My stepdaughter? Ah, she now cooks for a cripple. That is what she deserves. My daughters, Adiz and Onika, will marry rich men, chiefs, and businessmen. But Amara, she is finished." Adiz, standing proudly in a new wrapper, nodded. "Yes, Mama. Nobody will even remember her." Onika added slyly, "Maybe she is cleaning mud off his wheels right now." The women laughed cruelly, but Mama Ifioma, who overheard their words, shook her head sadly. She muttered to herself, "They think they are clever, but the hand of destiny is stronger than the hand of man." Back in Chaik's compound, Amara continued her daily routines. One night, while clearing away dishes, she noticed Chaik struggling to reach a book on a high shelf. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, took the book down, and placed it gently in his hands. "You could have asked a servant," she said softly. Chaik looked at her, his eyes steady. "But I want to see if you would come." Amara frowned slightly, not understanding. "I am your wife. Why would I not come?" For a long moment, Chaik said nothing. Then he opened the book and began to read aloud in a deep, calm voice. His words carried wisdom and poetry, and Amara listened entranced. She realized then that this man, though bound to a chair, had a mind as sharp as any blade. One evening, after many such quiet moments, Chief Okoro approached Chaik in private. "Sir," he whispered, "you have tested her enough. This girl's heart is pure. She sees beyond your chair." Chaik leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. "Yes, Okoro, but I must be sure. Too many have pretended before. Too many loved only the weight of my money, not the weight of my soul. If Amara truly loves me, then she must love me without knowing the life I keep hidden." Okoro nodded. "I understand. But remember, sir, time reveals all things, and time is on her side." Meanwhile, Amara knelt in her small room at night, whispering prayers. "Lord, I do not know why my life has taken this path, but this man is not cruel to me. If this is my destiny, give me the strength to walk it with dignity. Do not let bitterness grow in my heart." Her words floated into the night, carried by the wind, and though she could not see it, Chaik, in the next room, sat by his window, listening quietly. His heart, usually guarded like a fortress, softened a little more each time he heard her voice. By the end of that month, the villagers had grown silent in their gossip. Rumors spread that Amara was not only surviving, but thriving in her marriage. Some said they saw her walking beside Chaik in the evenings, pushing his chair with care. Others whispered that her beauty glowed even brighter than before, as if suffering had polished her spirit into pure gold. Back in Ngozi's compound, Adiz scoffed. "Lies. They're lies. That cripple cannot make her happy." But Onika bit her lip nervously. Deep down, she wondered if their plan to destroy Amara had somehow gone wrong. And so, Amara's life with Chaik unfolded, quiet, steady, and filled with small acts of kindness. She did not know that every moment was being weighed, every word being measured, by the man whose true identity was still hidden in the shadows. The test was far from over. Weeks turned into months, and Amara's life with Chaik settled into a quiet rhythm. Each morning she rose before dawn, swept the compound, and prepared his meals. In the evenings, she pushed his chair through the narrow paths of the village outskirts, where the two of them watched the sun set beyond the palm trees. Though she had never expected happiness from this forced marriage, Amara found herself strangely at peace. Chaik was not cruel. He did not raise his voice or demand unreasonable things. Instead, he listened when she spoke, and sometimes, just sometimes, she thought she saw a flicker of warmth in his eyes. But still, questions haunted her heart. Who was this man truly? Why did servants respect him as though he were more than he appeared? Why did Chief Okoro, who seemed like an important man, bow his head before Chike as though before a king? One quiet evening, Chike called her to sit beside him in the courtyard. The moon hung high, bathing the compound in silver light. "Amara," he said softly, "how you see me?" She frowned at the strange question. "You are my husband." "Yes," he said, his gaze sharp. "But what do you see a cripple? A burden? A punishment from your stepmother?" Her throat tightened. Slowly, she shook her head. "I see a man with dignity. I see a husband who treats me with more respect than my own family ever gave me. You may not walk, but your spirit stands tall." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then, unexpectedly, Chike laughed, a deep, rich laugh that startled her. "Amara, you are unlike anyone I have known." A few days later, Chike asked her to travel with him to the city. "We must visit my people," he said simply. Amara hesitated. She had never been beyond the boundaries of Yumadim. The thought of entering the bustling city, filled with cars and tall buildings, terrified her. But she could not refuse her husband. "I will go," she whispered. The next morning, Chief Okoro arrived with a black SUV. Amara gasped. She had never seen such a large car in her life. As Chike was lifted into the vehicle, the villagers gathered, murmuring with wide eyes, "Is that not a car for the rich? How can a cripple afford such luxury? Perhaps his family is wealthy." Ngozi, hearing the rumors, nearly dropped the basket of yams she was carrying. She ran to the roadside, her eyes wide with disbelief as the SUV sped past with Amara sitting proudly beside her husband. "What is this nonsense?" she hissed to Adiz and Onika. "I thought she married a beggar." The journey was long, but the moment they entered the city, Amara's breath caught. Tall buildings of glass stretched into the sky. Lights flickered everywhere, brighter than any lantern she had ever seen. The streets were filled with cars, their horns blaring, and people moving quickly as though the world would end if they slowed down. "Chike," she whispered, "what is this place?" He glanced at her, his eyes unreadable. "This is where I belong." The car turned into a wide driveway, guarded by tall iron gates. Beyond them stood a mansion unlike anything Amara could have imagined. White walls gleamed under the sun. Fountains sparkled in the courtyard. Expensive cars lined the driveway. Servants in neat uniforms hurried forward, bowing low. Amara's legs trembled. "Chike, is this your home?" He looked at her calmly. "Yes." She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. But you are in a wheelchair?" He finished her sentence. "Yes, and yet I am also Chief Chike Obi, one of the wealthiest men in this land. Billionaire, businessman, leader of enterprises across Nigeria. The man your stepmother thought would ruin your life is the man others bowed with respect." Amara staggered, her hands trembling. She felt as though the ground had vanished beneath her feet. Chief Okoro stepped forward, smiling. "Madam Amara, you are welcome to your new home. The master wished to test you, to see if you were like the many who love only gold. But you have passed the test. You honored him when you believed he had nothing." Amara's heart pounded wildly. She turned to Chike, tears springing to her eyes. You were testing me?" Chike's expression softened. "I have lived too long surrounded by false friends and greedy women. I needed to know if your heart was true, and you, Amara, have shown me more honor than I ever dreamed possible." Her chest tightened. I did not love you for wealth. I only tried to do what was right. And that," Chike said, reaching for her hand, "is why you are the only woman worthy to share my life." That evening, Amara was shown into a grand bedroom, walls painted in soft cream and gold. She stood by the window, staring out at the glittering city lights. She felt like she was living inside a dream she dared not believe. A knock sounded at the door. It was Chike. "Amara," he said gently, "does this life frighten you?" She nodded slowly. "It is too much. I do not belong in such wealth." He wheeled closer, his gaze steady. "You belong here more than anyone, not because of your beauty, but because of your soul." Money can build mansions, but only love builds a home. Will you stay by my side, Amara? Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered, Yes, I will stay. Back in Umidum, the news spread like wildfire. Villagers whispered in awe. Chaik is not poor at all. He is a billionaire. And Amara, the girl her stepmother tried to destroy, is now living in a mansion. Ngozi nearly fainted from shock. Adiz tore her wrapper in frustration. Onika wept bitterly. For all their scheming, fate had given Amara the crown. But in the city, Amara did not gloat. She prayed quietly, thanking God for turning her pain into blessing. And though her new life dazzled her eyes, she promised herself never to lose the humility that had carried her through suffering. Back in Umidum village, the wind carried whispers like wildfire. News of Chaik's hidden wealth had reached even the smallest huts and palm groves. Children ran barefoot across the dusty paths, shouting, Amara's husband is rich. He owns mansions in the city. The elders, sitting beneath the Irako tree, nodded with awe. It seems the gods have favored the girl. Who would have thought that the crippled man was a billionaire in disguise? Women fetching water from the stream gossiped loudly. Ngozi thought she was clever, marrying her stepdaughter to a beggar. Now look, Amara wears jewels while Ngozi eats shame. Each word was like a thorn in Ngozi's heart. She could not step outside without feeling the weight of the villagers' mocking eyes. Even her friends, who once whispered against Amara, now kept their distance, ashamed to be seen near her. Ngozi sat in her hut, her face twisted with rage. Adiz and Onika stood beside her, both pale with fear. Mother, Adiz whispered, the people laugh at us. They say Amara has become the queen of fortune. Ngozi's hands clench around her wrapper. Silence. This is not the end. Do you think wealth will protect her from me? She is still the girl I raised like a slave. She will not rise above me. Onika shifted uneasily. But, Mother, if Chaik is truly a billionaire, then he is too powerful. What can we do against him? Ngozi's eyes narrowed. Power or no power, a man's heart is still weak. If Amara is his wife, then she holds the key. We will return to her, beg forgiveness, pretend loyalty. Once she welcomes us into her new life, we will take what should have been ours. A week later, Ngozi and her daughters dressed in their finest wrappers and traveled to the city. They carried baskets of palm oil and cola nuts, pretending to come in peace. When the gates of Chaik's mansion opened before them, their mouths fell open in shock. The marble floors, the shining chandeliers, the fountain spraying crystal water. It was like stepping into another world. Servants bowed as they passed, leading them into a grand sitting room. There sat Amara, dressed in a gown of soft silk, her beauty radiant yet calm. Chaik sat beside her, his presence commanding even in his chair. Ngozi forced a smile, her teeth clenched beneath it. My daughter, she said sweetly, bowing low, we have come to greet you. We have heard of your good fortune, and our hearts rejoice. Amara's eyes, once timid before her stepmother, now held quiet strength. She did not rise, but her voice was steady. You have come a long way, Ngozi. Tell me, what is it you truly seek? Ngozi placed a trembling hand on her chest, pretending to weep. Oh, my daughter, forgive the harshness of the past. I was blind, but now I see. You are blessed, and we, your family, only wish to share in your joy. Do not cast us away. Adiz quickly added, Yes, sister, forgive us. We were foolish girls. Let us stand by your side. Onika fell to her knees. We are sorry. Amara, please let us stay with you. The act was convincing, their tears flowing like a river. But Chaik's sharp eyes caught the greed glittering beneath. He motioned for Chief Okoro to step forward. Madame Ngozi, Chaik said calmly, I know your type well. You see wealth, and you run to it like flies to honey. But know this, in this house there is no room for deceit. Ngozi's face flushed. You cannot speak so to me. I am Amara's mother. You were never a mother to her, Chaik replied coldly. You gave her sorrow when she deserved love. You threw her to me thinking you had destroyed her future. Now you crawl here seeking gold. That is not motherhood. That is wickedness. Amara's voice broke through the heavy silence. Ngozi, she said softly, all my life I prayed you would one day love me. But instead of love, you gave me pain. I fetched water, cooked your food, washed your children's clothes, and still you beat me. When you forced me into this marriage, I thought my life had ended, yet God turned my sorrow into joy. Tell me, should I welcome you now after all this? Ngozi's lips trembled. For the first time, she had no answer. The servants stood at the edges of the room, watching with disgust. Even her own daughters lowered their heads in shame. Amara rose slowly from her chair. Her posture was graceful, commanding. I will not repay evil with evil. I will not cast curses upon you. But neither will I allow you to poison the life God has given me. Leave this house, Ngozi, and do not return unless your heart is truly changed. Ngozi's mask of humility cracked, revealing the fury beneath. She pointed a trembling finger at Amara. Ungrateful girl, you think wealth makes you my equal? I raised you, I fed you, I clothed you, and this is how you repay me. Chaik's voice thundered. Enough! Guards, show them out. The guards stepped forward. Ngozi, Adiz, and Onika were escorted out through the gates, their protests echoing in the courtyard. Villagers passing by the mansion turned to stare, whispering as they recognized the disgraced family. For Ngozi, humiliation burned deeper than fire. She had dreamed of sharing Chaik's fortune, but instead she was thrown out like a beggar. Her daughters wept openly as they walked back to the village, their clothes stained with dust. And in that moment, Ngozi realized the cruelest truth. In her attempt to destroy Amara, she had only destroyed herself. Inside the mansion, Amara sank into her seat, her heart heavy. Chaik reached for her hand. You showed wisdom today. Mercy without weakness. You have the strength of a queen, Amara. She turned to him with quiet tears. I never wanted revenge. I only wanted peace. If God has given me this life, then I will protect it with love. Chaik smiled, his eyes glowing with pride. And that is why I chose you, Amara, not for your beauty, but for the purity of your soul. That night, as the city lights flickered like stars, Amara knelt in prayer. She prayed not for riches, but for strength, to remain humble, to remain kind, and to walk in light even as shadows of envy chased her. Morning sunlight spilled across the mansion's courtyard, painting the marble floors in shades of gold. Birds chirped sweetly in the palm trees that lined the compound, as though they too celebrated the new life Amara had stepped into. Weeks had passed since Ngozi's humiliating visit. The sting of her cruelty still lingered in Amara's memory, but it no longer controlled her heart. For the first time in years, Amara woke each day with peace. She rose from a soft bed, ate warm meals without fear, and spent her hours learning, growing, and standing proudly as Chaik's wife. The once timid village girl was no longer a shadow. She was becoming a woman of grace and dignity. Chaik watched her transformation with quiet joy. Though bound to his chair, he carried himself with the strength of a king. Yet, in Amara's presence, his heart softened. One evening, as the sky glowed orange with sunset, Chaik called to sit beside him on the balcony. Below them, the city's lights blinked awake like stars. Amara, he began, his voice deep yet tender, when I first met you, I feared you would despise me. Many before you turned away at the sight of my chair. But you stayed. You saw not the weakness of my legs, but the strength of my heart, and for that I will honor you all my days. Amara's eyes glistened. You gave me respect when I had none. You gave me safety when I thought I would only know suffering. If this is my destiny, then I embrace it with joy. They clasped hands, a bond stronger than gold. The following week, Chaik invited the elders of Yumidim and respected leaders from the city to his mansion. He wished to honor Amara publicly, to show the world that she was no longer the mistreated stepdaughter, but a woman of great worth. The day of the gathering was bright and clear. Musicians beat the talking drums as guests arrived in colorful attires. Long tables were laid with steaming pots of jollof rice, spicy goat meat, and baskets of fresh fruit. When Amara stepped into the hall, the crowd fell silent. She wore a gown of deep blue, adorned with golden beads that glimmered in the light. A coral necklace rested on her neck, and her hair was braided in the traditional style of queens. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her back straight, her head high. The elders rose in respect. Women whispered in admiration. Even men bowed their heads. Chaik, seated at the front, gestured for silence. His voice carried across the hall. Today we celebrate not wealth, not power, but the triumph of truth. This woman beside me was scorned, beaten, and cast aside. Yet she endured. She walked through fire and came forth shining like gold. Let the world know. This is my wife, Amara, the jewel of my house. The hall erupted with cheers. Drums thundered, voices lifted, and the celebration filled the air like thunder after rain. Back in Yumidim, the story spread. Children sang songs about Amara's rise. Young girls whispered her name with hope in their hearts, believing that one day they too could rise above hardship. Even the cruelest villagers admitted that Amara's endurance was nothing short of miraculous. As for Ngozi, Adiz, and Onika, they were left in shame. Villagers who once supported them turned their backs. Traders refused to give them credit. Farmers mocked their greed, and no one trusted them again. Their hut grew quiet and empty, a place of bitterness and regret. But Amara, in her wisdom, did not seek revenge. She sent food to the poor of the village, ensuring even those who mocked her before now ate from her kindness. When people asked why she gave so freely, she answered simply, "Because I know the hunger of suffering, and I will not let another child feel what I felt." Months later, Chaik called Amara into his study. Papers lay across the desk, contracts, plans, and blueprints for schools and hospitals. "Amara," he said, his eyes shining with purpose, "I wish to build something greater than wealth. With you beside me, I want to use my fortune to raise our people, to give orphans a home, widows a hand, and children an education. Will you stand with me in this dream?" Amara's heart swelled. She thought of her lonely childhood, of carrying water jars larger than her small frame, of nights crying on the cold floor while her stepmother's daughters slept on mats. And now, here was her chance to turn pain into blessing. "Yes, Chaik," she whispered, her voice firm with conviction. "I will stand with you. Let us build a new dawn together." Years passed, and their vision blossomed. Schools rose in villages where children once wandered aimlessly. Hospitals opened their doors to the sick who had long been abandoned. Women were trained with skills. Farmers were given tools, and hope returned to homes long forgotten. And wherever Amara went, people bowed their heads not in fear, but in gratitude. She had become more than a wife to a billionaire. She was a mother to the poor, a sister to forgotten, and a queen in the hearts of her people. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Amara stood beside Chaik on the balcony. The city glowed before them, alive with lights. Chaik reached for her hand, his smile tender. "Amara," he said softly, "do you see this? This is the dawn we dreamed of. From ashes you rose. From cruelty you built love. The world may call me a billionaire, but the greatest treasure I ever found is you." Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of joy. She leaned close, whispering, "And you are my miracle, Chaik, my dawn after darkness." Together, they gazed at the horizon, where night gave way to light, where sorrow had turned to joy, and where love had conquered cruelty. Theirs was not just a story of wealth, but of resilience, forgiveness, and faith, a story that would be told for generations as the tale of Amara and the hidden billionaire.